Yuni was born into a family that carried a dark and dreadful reputation. Her father, was a man feared by the entire village of Idiom for his wickedness and ruthless ways. His name was enough to send shivers down people's spines, and the mere thought of associating with him or his bloodline was considered foolish, if not outright dangerous. As a result, his children bore the burden of his sins. No one in the village wanted to befriend them, let alone marry them. It wasn't just Us actions that terrified people, it was the belief that evil ran in their blood. It didn't matter if his children were innocent or different from him, the village had already made up its mind. The daughters of no matter how beautiful or kind they might be, were seen as cursed. Any man who dared to express interest in them was mocked and warned of the doom that awaited anyone who dared to entangle themselves with such a family. Despite being raised in an environment of fear and rejection, Yuni longed for a normal life. She wanted nothing more than to be free from the heavy shadow of her father's name. Unlike her siblings, who either embraced or resigned themselves to their fate, Yuni sought independence. Instead of waiting for an impossible marriage proposal, she learned a trade. She started making and selling baskets, traveling beyond the village to markets where people didn't recognize her name. It was in one of these markets that she met Ebuka, a young businessman from a distant village. Unlike the men in Edom, Ibuka knew nothing of her father's dark legacy. When he saw Yuni, he was captivated by her beauty and grace, and he boldly approached her. At first, Yuni couldn't believe it. No man had ever looked at her like that, let alone spoken to her with admiration. It felt like a dream, something she had longed for but never thought possible. When Yuni rushed home to tell her mother, Akel, about the encounter, she was met with cautious optimism. Akel, Yu's favored wife, had always looked up for her daughter and saw this as an opportunity. If Ibuka truly knew nothing about their family, then Yuni had a chance at happiness so long as she kept the truth hidden. Alki warned her daughter to be careful, to avoid revealing too much, and most importantly, to make sure Ibuka was wealthy before she became too attached. Yuni, though overwhelmed with excitement, understood the importance of her mother's word. She knew this was her one chance to escape the curse of her bloodline, to prove that she could be more than just Yua's daughter. And so she agreed to keep her past a secret, determined to carve out a future for herself no matter what it took. Yuni's relationship with Ibuka blossomed quickly, and before long, he was deeply in love with her. He admired her beauty, her soft-spoken nature, and the mystery that surrounded her. Whenever he tried to ask about her family, she skillfully changed the subject, steering conversations toward lighter topics. Ibuka, enchanted by her presence, didn't push too hard. He had already made up his mind he wanted to marry Yuni. One day, he expressed his desire to visit her family and formally ask for her hand. Yuni felt a wave of panic rush over her. She knew that if Ibuka ever met her father, everything would be ruined. Her mother, Aukel, quickly devised a plan. She arranged for Ibuka to visit their home on a day when Yu would be away, allowing her to stand in as the head of the family. She welcomed Ibuka warmly, assuring him that Yu had urgent matters to attend to. Ibuka, seeing the warmth in Akui's eyes and the modesty of their home, felt reassured. Without hesitation, he declared his intentions, asking for Yuni's hand in marriage. Ake, knowing this was her daughter's best chance at escaping their family's curse, gave her blessing and encouraged Ibuka to return with his people to finalize the wedding. As soon as Ibuka left, a villager who had been watching from afar approached him. The man, a longtime resident of Edom, felt it was his duty to warn the outsider. "Do you know who you're about to marry?" he asked, his voice filled with urgency. "That girl is the daughter of the most feared man in this land. Her entire family is tainted with wickedness. If you value your life and your family, run while you still can." Ibuka was taken aback by the warning, but instead of believing it, he brushed it off as jealousy. He convinced himself that the man must have once pursued Yuni and had been rejected. How else could he explain such a desperate attempt to ruin her reputation? He had met Yuni's mother, who is nothing but kind, and Yuni herself had been nothing but loving and gentle. There was no reason to believe she came from an evil family. Ignoring the warning, he continued with his plans to marry Yuni, confident that he was making the right choice. The wedding took place in Ibuka's village, and Yuni was welcomed with open arms. For a short time, she believed she had truly escaped her past. However, everything changed when she overheard a conversation between Ibuka and his younger brother, Nonomo. That was when she learned the painful truth: Ibuka was not as wealthy as she had believed. In fact, he had been struggling financially for a long time, and it was Nano who had been supporting him. Nono had even given him the money needed for the wedding, hoping that once Ibuka was settled, he too could start his own family. Yuni felt as if the ground had been ripped from beneath her. She had been deceived. The man she thought would provide her with a better life had nothing. Rage boiled inside her. She was the daughter of how could she, of all people, end up married to a poor man? That night, as Ibuka reached out to touch her, she slapped his hand away in disgust. From that moment forward, she vowed that she would not stay with him. She would find a way out, and no matter what it took, she would claim the life she believed she deserved. Yuni could not accept the reality of her situation. She had spent her entire life being judged and rejected because of her father's reputation, and now when she finally thought she had escaped, she realized she had been tricked into marrying a man with no money. She seethed with anger, feeling betrayed and humiliated. This was not the life she had planned for herself. She was the daughter of us. She deserved wealth, power, and status, not a struggling merchant who depended on his younger brother. But she was not one to sit back and accept defeat. If she had made a mistake, she would find a way to fix it. And to her, the answer was clear. She would not stay with Ibuka. Instead, she would set her sights on Nono, the man who had real financial security. After all, he was the one supporting Ibuka, and in her mind, that meant he was the man she should have married in the first place. It was not about love, it was about survival, and Yuni would do whatever it took to secure a better future for herself. Determined, Yuni went back to her mother and confessed everything. She sobbed in Aka's arms, telling her about Ibuka's deception and how she could not bear to be married to a poor man. Ake, always ready with a scheme, listened carefully and reassured her daughter that they would find a way out of this mess. "You are not bound to this marriage," Aki whispered. "There is still time to fix this." Yuni, desperate and willing to go to any length, nodded in agreement. They both knew that the only obstacle standing in Yuni's way was Ibuka. And since she was already pregnant with his child, that complicated things. The child would tie her to him forever, which was unacceptable. Aki and Yuni devised a plan. Yuna would return to Ibuka's home and act as if nothing was wrong while secretly trying to win Nonono over. At the same time, they would find a way to get rid of the pregnancy before it was too late. If she could free herself from Ibuka, she could have another chance at securing the life she wanted. However, things did not go according to plan. When Yuni attempted to leave and go back to her mother's house under the pretense of feeling unwell, Nono stopped her. He reminded her of what Ibuka had told him before he disappeared, that she was already 2 months pregnant and that Nono was to ensure she remained in the family and gave birth to the child safely. Yuni was furious. Her escape had been blocked, and now she had no way of getting rid of the baby without raising suspicion. But even worse, before she could make any more moves, Nono shattered her dreams by introducing his fiancée, Yudoshi. The sight of another woman claiming the man she had set her sights on drove Yuni into a rage. She stormed into her room, fuming with jealousy and frustration. If she could not have Nono, then no one else would. And if Udoki thought she would live happily with him, she was wrong home. Yuni vowed that Udoshi would suffer for taking what should have been hers. She would not accept defeat, not now, not ever. Yuni's hatred for Udochi grew stronger with each passing day. She could not stand to see her living happily with Nono, the man she had set her sights on. The more she watched them together, the more her rage festered. To her, Udoshi was nothing more than an intruder who had stolen what rightfully belonged to her. She made no effort to hide her hostility, openly treating Udochi as an enemy. Whenever Udochi tried to be kind to her, Yuna would shut her down with harsh words, making it clear that she would never accept her presence in the household. At first, Udoshi was hurt and confused. She had no intention of taking anything from Yuni, nor did she wish to cause problems, but Yunai refused to see it that way. To make matters worse, Yunai began making cruel remarks, calling Udochi barren whenever she failed to conceive. Each miscarriage Udoshi suffered only fueled Yuni's cruel taunts. She would mock her, saying she was nothing but a useless woman who could never bear children. Udoshi, devastated by her losses, cried in silence, not knowing what to do. Determined to break free from the torment, Udoshi sought help. She traveled to a distant village where she met a powerful elderly woman known for her spiritual wisdom. With tears in her eyes, Udoshi explained her suffering the endless miscarriages, the nightmares that always preceded them, and the cruelty she faced at home. The old woman listened carefully before handing her a small pouch of powder. Sprinkle this at your doorstep and around your bed the night after your next menstrual cycle, the woman instructed. The one who seeks to harm you will no longer have power over you. Udochi held onto the powder as if it were her last hope and returned home, determined to follow the woman's instructions. That night, she did exactly as she was told. Days passed, and to her amazement, she found out she was pregnant again. This time, however, things were different. She had no nightmares, no strange pains, no sudden illnesses. Her pregnancy remained strong, but what shocked her even more was what happened to Yuni's daughter. One morning, Yuni's young daughter woke up screaming, her eyes swollen shut. No treatment could soothe her, and within days, she lost her vision completely. The family was horrified, but Udoshi couldn't ignore the coincidence. She recalled the old woman's words that the one responsible for her suffering would face the consequences of their own evil. Could it be that Yuni had been behind her miscarriages all along? At first, she didn't want to believe it, but the more she thought about it, the more it made sense. She had always suspected that someone was causing her pain, but she never had proof. Now, seeing Yuni's devastation, she realized that the balance had shifted. Yuni, however, did not see this as a warning to change her ways. Instead, she grew even more vengeful. In her mind, Udoshi had somehow caused her daughter's blindness, and for that, she would pay. She decided then and there that she would not rest until Udoshi was completely destroyed. If she had failed before, she would not fail again. This time, she would wait for the perfect moment to strike, and when she did, she would make sure Udochi never recovered. Yuni's hatred for Udochi only intensified after her daughter's blindness. She refused to see it as a consequence of her own evil deeds. Instead, she convinced herself that Udochi was to blame. Every time she looked at her child, she seethed with rage, believing that Udoshi had somehow cast a curse on her daughter as revenge. But rather than confronting her directly, Yuni decided to be patient. She knew that Udoshi's biggest moment of vulnerability would come when she was giving birth, and that would be the perfect time to strike. She waited, watching carefully as Udochi's pregnancy progressed, secretly planning her downfall. Night after night, she whispered curses under her breath, determined to make sure that Udoshi's child never saw the light of day. She didn't just want the baby gone, she wanted Udoshi to suffer, to experience the same pain and despair that she had felt. In her mind, this was justice, not revenge. She had already lost too much, and she would not allow Udochi to take anything more from her. However, what Yuni didn't know was that Nono was growing increasingly worried. His wife had already endured so much, and he wasn't going to let anything happen to her or their unborn child. Remembering a man he had once met during his business travels, a man who had given him a mark of protection as a reward for his honesty, Nono set out on a journey to find him again. When he finally located the man, he explained everything. The strange misfortunes that had plagued his wife, the nightmares, and his fear that someone in the family was working against them. The man listened carefully before handing Nono a single leaf. "This leaf is powerful," he warned. "When your wife goes into labor, place it at the entrance of your home. Any evil force working against her will be stopped immediately, but be warned the consequences are severe. Whoever is behind this wickedness will face their own destruction." Nono took the leaf and returned home, keeping it hidden until the time was right. When Udoshi finally went into labor, he followed the man's instructions exactly. As the baby was being delivered, Yuni sat by her window, watching with a twisted smile on her face. She was confident that disaster would strike at any moment. But then something unexpected happened. The baby was born, but instead of crying immediately, there was only silence. The midwife worked desperately to get the newborn to cry, and after several tense moments, the baby let out a loud, piercing wail. At that exact moment, a scream erupted from another part of the house. Nono rushed outside and was horrified by what he saw. Yuni lay on the ground, convulsing violently, her skin turning black as if it had been burned from the inside out. She gasped for air, her body twisting in agony, and then, to everyone's shock, she began confessing. She admitted to everything: how she had manipulated Ibuka, how she and her mother had used dark magic to get rid of him, how she had tormented Udochi and planned to kill her unborn child. The entire family stood in stunned silence as her words poured out, and before anyone could even process what was happening, Yuni let out one final breath and collapsed. She was dead. The horror of the moment left everyone shaken, but at the same time, there was an overwhelming sense of relief. The nightmare was finally over. Evil had been exposed and destroyed, and peace had returned to the family at last. With Yuni's death, the dark cloud that had loomed over the family for so long finally lifted. The revelation of her evil deeds sent shockwaves through the household, leaving Nono Udochi and the rest of the family in stunned disbelief. They had spent years living under the same roof with someone whose heart had been filled with nothing but envy, bitterness, and malice. Yet, despite everything, there was no celebration in her passing, only a somber understanding of how deeply evil could consume a person. Azuka, the husband Yuni had once despised, was left alone with their children, now burdened with raising them without their mother. Udoshi, despite everything she had endured, stepped up and cared for them as if they were her own, choosing compassion over revenge. Nono, too, focused on protecting his family, ensuring that the cycle of darkness that had plagued them would never return. Slowly but surely, the family healed, proving that no matter how deep the wounds, there was always hope for restoration. Yuni's downfall was not just the result of one bad decision, it was the accumulation of greed, selfishness, and the belief that she was entitled to more than she had. She was not content with her fate, and rather than working to build a better life through honest means, she resorted to manipulation and destruction. But evil, no matter how well hidden, will always reveal itself in time. The same dark forces she used against others turned on her in the end, showing that those who choose wickedness will ultimately be consumed by it. Her story is a stark reminder that chasing after power and wealth without morality leads only to ruin. Had she embraced love, gratitude, and humility, her life could have been different. Instead, she let resentment guide her actions, and she paid the ultimate price, and she paid the ultimate price. The story of Uni is a warning to all who believe they can build happiness on the suffering of others. It will never last. In reality, we see people like Uni everywhere, those who are never satisfied, who seek to climb higher at the expense of others, who manipulate, deceive, and destroy just to get what they want. But life has a way of balancing itself. Lies eventually unravel, and evil will never go unpunished forever. The choices we make shape not only our future, but the future of those around us. If we allow bitterness and envy to consume us, we will ultimately destroy ourselves just as Uni did. But if we choose kindness, patience, and integrity, we create a life of true fulfillment. This story is more than just a folktale. It's a reflection of real life. It teaches us that while darkness may persist for a time, it will never win in the end. No matter how far one strays down the wrong path, the truth will always come to light. And when it does, justice will prevail.